You've probably felt it at the grocery store, right? That sticker shock when you look at the price of beef. It is more expensive than it has ever been. But here's the thing that just doesn't add up. At the very same time, a lot of the American ranchers who actually raise the cattle are struggling just to keep their businesses afloat. It just doesn't make sense.
It's a really strange picture. On one side, you've got us, the consumers, paying these record high prices. But on the other side, the very people raising the animals are seeing their slice of the pie shrink to historic lows. This is the mystery at the heart of the American food system right now.
So it really begs the question, doesn't it? Where's all the money going? I mean, if we're paying more and ranchers are getting less, someone has to be making a fortune in that huge gap in the middle. So let's follow the money.
To really get to the bottom of this paradox, we need to look at who's standing between the rancher's pasture and the grocery store aisle. And what we find there is a very small but incredibly powerful group of companies that basically run the whole show.
It's time to meet the Big Four. Now, you probably won't see these names on the package of ground beef you buy, but trust me, they are the giants who control almost every single step of the process that gets that beef to your plate.
Just take a look at this. It's pretty wild. Just 4 companies, the Big Four, process an incredible 85% of all the beef in the entire United States. That leaves every other company in the country fighting over the leftover 15% of the market. This kind of insane market dominance has a name. It's called an oligopoly. And believe me, it has huge consequences for everyone.
And here they are. You've got JBS and National Beef, which are owned by parent companies in Brazil. And then you have Tyson and Cargill, which are based here in the US. When you put them together, their decisions can basically set prices, control the entire supply, and pretty much snuff out any real competition. For ranchers, that means they have very, very few options when it comes time to sell their cattle.
And look, this isn't just some abstract economic theory. People on the ground are feeling this every day. As Nebraska Senator and rancher Deb Fisher said, there were times when these big packers were just making windfall profits, while pretty much everyone else in the business was losing money. So how in the world do we end up here?
Right, this kind of control didn't just happen overnight. Nope, it's the result of a 40-year-long process of mergers and buyouts that completely changed the face of the American beef industry.
This timeline really tells the story. If you go back to 1980, the market looked completely different. The top 4 companies only controlled about 36%. But then, during the 80s and 90s, they started building these massive, hyper-efficient processing plants that smaller, local guys just couldn't compete with. And by 1995, in just 15 years, their market share exploded to over 80%, and it's basically stayed that way ever since.
And again, there's that word for it, an oligopoly. It's what happens when just a handful of companies have such a tight grip on the market that they can effectively call all the shots. And that lack of competition, well, it has very real effects on all of us.
So let's talk about that real-world impact, because this squeeze is felt by everyone, from the family ranch trying to survive, to you at the checkout, to the security of our entire national food supply.
Back in the 1970s, when there was a lot more competition, things were much more balanced. For every dollar you spent on beef, the rancher who raised the animal got about 70 cents of it. It was a system that could actually support independent family farms.
And today, that number has been cut by more than half. Ranchers now get less than 37 cents of that same dollar. So all that extra money is being absorbed in the middle by the processors and the retailers. That's a huge piece of the puzzle for why you're paying more and they're earning less.
But you know, this goes way beyond just the price tag. This much concentration makes our whole food supply chain incredibly fragile. I mean, think about it. When just a few giant plants process most of our meat, one single problem, a fire, a cyber attack, a pandemic, can cause a massive nationwide crisis.
And we've already seen this play out for real. In 2019, a fire at just one Tyson plant knocked out almost 6% of the nation's beef supply. Then, just 2 years later, a cyber attack on JBS brought 20%, 1/5, of the country's entire meat supply to a screeching halt. That's a serious vulnerability.
Well, after years and years of complaints from ranchers and consumer advocates, it seems like the federal government has finally started to pay attention.
The pressure kept building until, finally, the U.S. Department of Justice launched a formal antitrust investigation into the Big Four meatpackers. This was a really big step.
And the directive came with a very strong message stating that action had to be taken to fight illegal monopolies and to make sure corporations weren't criminally profiting at the expense of the American people. So what exactly are they looking into? Well, the investigation is focusing on some really serious allegations. Things like price fixing and collusion, coordinating production cuts to deliberately drive up prices, manipulating the market to pay ranchers less, and even retaliating against independent producers who dare to speak out.
This investigation really brings the entire beef industry to a critical turning point. Whatever happens next could really reshape our food system for generations to come.
You know, there are really only two ways this can go. One path is real structural reform, maybe even breaking up these massive companies to bring back some actual competition. The other path? It's pretty much business as usual, where maybe the companies pay a big fine that, to be honest, is just a fraction of their profits, and then nothing fundamentally changes.
Which brings us right back to the central question that this whole thing raises. When just 4 companies control so much of the food on your plate, you have to ask yourself, who is really in charge here? It's definitely something to think about the next time you're walking down the meat aisle. Thanks for watching, and be sure to click that subscribe button. Oh, and visit foodindustry.com for more information.